Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Cover 2 podcast. I am Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And guys, we have another giant football show for you today. We are going to be predicting the college football playoff Final Four. We are in championship week in college football. Jared, I think this is the most we've ever covered college football ever on this podcast, and we're finally to, essentially the last week of the regular season, and then we get into the bowl games and the playoffs, and just, as close to NFL football as you could get, essentially, after this. So we're going to predict that. We're also going to get into the NFL a little bit later, discussing Jared's Cowboys. Another disappointing performance, and this time on the biggest stage since, 1995 or something? Like, the ratings for this game were insane, and the ratings for Thanksgiving games in general were insane. But the Cowboys kind of, they blew it again 2 weeks in a row. So we want to talk about the Cowboys because we both praised Dallas, this last month, and they've ended up going 3-4 in that month after we praised them. We'll also talk about the Packers, Patriots, every other good team in the NFL. But we want to start today with the biggest news in college football, and that is the current rankings. And Jared, just slight head coaching changes in college football. Just a little bit. You guys know Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley. We're going to talk about them in a second. But Jared, the rankings have come out for the final week of the year. The final six the top six go this way. Of course, Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2 after that giant win against Ohio State. What a game that was, and what a performance that was for Michigan. Maybe a little surprising to some people. We'll talk about this. Alabama at number 3 after a really terrible performance against Auburn. Jared, I've always preached that rivalries, they really do make it tough. But this Alabama team had 3 points at the end of coming up to about 1 minute left in this game. So different than the normal little rivalry talk I discuss. Cincinnati at number 4, they finally jump into the top 4, and then at 5 and 6, Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. Jared, discuss your opinion on the rankings. What do you think? Alabama number 3, Cincinnati number 4, Oklahoma State jumps Notre Dame. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a debate show, right? Like, we're supposed to be debating back and forth and arguing and all this stuff, and I don't know if I have any problems with what the committee did. Right? I mean, Georgia obviously has been the most consistent team all year long. No reason why they shouldn't be number 1. Michigan jumping up 3 spots to number 2. Can't be mad at that either, right? I mean, they looked completely dominant in that game against Ohio State. The way that they were able to run the ball consistently when Ohio State knew they were going to run, and they still were able to execute and get first down after first down after first down. That was unreal to me. Like, Michigan looked like a legitimate team that can go up against the Georgia and compete in that type of situation and that type of game. So Michigan deserves to be in that number 2 spot. Alabama, Alabama's lucky to be number 3. I think that would be the one maybe hesitancy that I have, is to potentially put them at number 4 because of the poor performance that they had, right? And I mean, some people can blame Auburn for maybe giving the game away, having some bad clock management and those types of things. So let's give credit to Alabama for actually pulling that game out, but it was very ugly and was a not typical of what we're used to seeing from a Nick Saban team. So I think they're lucky to be at number 3. Cincinnati, this is their second straight week being at number 4, and I think they deserve it, right? Maybe they haven't played their best football in the last couple of weeks, but guess what? They're still undefeated, and they deserve to be in there as well. So I don't have any problems with this list. Like, I don't have much more to say unless you can think of something or another reason why a Notre Dame or an Oklahoma should leapfrog Cincinnati. To me, right now, as it stands, until we get to Saturday in the college and the conference championship games, I'm good.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I agree 100% with the top 6. I didn't agree with, in the top 10, Ole Miss jumping Baylor, because I think that Ole Miss, Baylor didn't do anything wrong last week, and Ole Miss only beat Mississippi State, who's, a near 500 team. I don't really know why. Both were close games, and it really hurts Baylor's chances of getting in the college football playoff. And again, we'll talk about this later, Jared. This is not over. Like, even some of those teams at 8 and 9 technically have a chance because they're in conference championship games. It really worked out to be to have a fun Friday and Saturday this weekend. Really Saturday because Friday's Pac-12 championship game is essentially for the Rose Bowl. Neither of those teams have a chance at the college football playoff.
Right.
I think I'll say this. When you look at Alabama, okay, and we've talked a lot of crap on them, and you know, we know they lost to Texas A&M, who's, you know, barely ranked, and Cincinnati's undefeated. But let me just say this, okay? Like, when you look at what Cincinnati has done this year, they're 12-0, okay? That's really it. You also add in the win against Notre Dame. That's big because Notre Dame has only lost one game, and it's to Cincinnati. I mean, Notre Dame is undefeated besides that game against Cincinnati. But the rest of these games, man, I mean, they blow out their opponents to begin the year. And really up until week 6, they still blow out UCF. And then listen to this, Jared. Cincinnati, they struggle against Navy. It's obviously an awkward team, but they only win by 7. They struggle against Tulane, only beat them by 19, only score 31 points. They struggle against Tulsa. That's 3 weeks in a row. They beat Tulsa 28-20. Struggle a little bit against USF, who is like a 3-win team. You know, it's 4 weeks in a row. They get an impressive win against SMU, a normal win against ECU, but like the way Cincinnati has finished this season so far has been kind of terrible. And if you look at what Alabama's done this year and look at what they've done, 44-13, 48-14, win against Florida, blowing out Southern Miss, blowing out Ole Miss, blowing out Mississippi State. Obviously, the loss to Texas A&M. Everyone's had losses this year except for Cincinnati and Georgia. Blow out Tennessee, beat their rival LSU, blow out New Mexico State, beat Arkansas, who was ranked at the time, and then obviously the ugly win this week. I think we're overreacting a little bit to one game when there's been 4 or 5 of those for Cincinnati. And I don't think that if Alabama played the same schedule Cincinnati did, the scores would look like that. Right, Jared? I think you can agree with that. So I think, for me, Alabama absolutely should be at number 3. And if you think otherwise, well, you just got to look at the facts. And the facts are that Alabama has maybe played 2 stinkers this season. Cincinnati, against really bad teams, has played about 4 or 5. They're just undefeated, and that's really the only reason they're in the top 4. They're not a top 4 team, in my opinion. And it's going to be even more of a joke if when Alabama loses to Georgia and Cincinnati somehow avoids Georgia in that first matchup. It's going to be a joke because Cincinnati does not. They're 12-0, I get it. But one win against Notre Dame and then struggling against Tulane and Southern Miss and all these other teams, it doesn't do it for me. So
okay, so based off of that, what you're saying is take that Cincinnati win away from Notre Dame, or let's just say that Notre Dame and Cincinnati don't even play each other this year.
Yeah.
You're saying Cincinnati would not be in the top 4 right now if it wasn't for that win against Notre Dame.
No, because you got to look at like San Diego State and Texas San Antonio, who were undefeated at some points this year. Texas San Antonio finally lost last week, and San Diego State lost earlier this season to Fresno State, who's a pretty good team. Those teams wouldn't have had a chance if they were undefeated. So because they didn't play a Notre Dame, right? And I think the college football playoff committee is kind of like, you played one great team and you won. Good job. But like they've played nobody else and they've struggled against Tulane. And I mean, like, remember how much we talked about Oklahoma for struggling against Tulane? Like, Oklahoma now is not even in the stratosphere of the college football playoff, and they lost their coach. Like, you know, if we were talking about that with Cincinnati right now, it's like nobody would, because you just expect them to kind of struggle against these teams, right? So,
well, I mean, yeah. Well, listen, Alabama, like top 5 power conference, right? Oklahoma, sure. Power 5 conference.
Yeah.
Cincinnati in the American Conference. So I think we also need to take into account that Cincinnati does not get the type of recruits that an Oklahoma or an Alabama would. And if Oklahoma and Alabama had the schedule of Cincinnati, they would obviously blow out all of their opponents, right? And so I think what Cincinnati has done with the type of recruits that they're able to get, I think is what has been impressive, right? Yeah. I think we did kind of maybe get a little ahead of ourselves with those first 5-6 games of the year, like you mentioned, when they were just obliterating teams, right? And it was like, oh, wow, okay, like this team they're doing what they're expected to do. Yeah. But as the season goes on, More tape is out there. They did play some better teams than they were playing in the beginning of the year, right? Like a Navy that is a different type of offense, and then an SMU that was leading the nation in total offense, right? And then they beat them pretty handily. So I'm a little, I think I'm a little higher on Cincinnati than you are, right? I think we have to, like I said, the recruits that they get, they're not getting 4 or 5-star athletes left and right. They're having to deal with 2 and 3 stars that aren't really getting recruited by the Power 5 conferences. And they're saying, okay, well, we'll take you. And then they're basically, I give a lot of credit to the coaching staff, which may not be there at the end of this year with all the new head coaching positions that have opened up, which we're going to get to in a minute. But Cincinnati, I think we got to give a lot of credit to their coaching staff, how they've been able to form this team with the athletes that they have.
Yeah, no, all credit to them for that too. I don't want to knock Cincinnati and say they're not a really, really good college football team. I'm just saying only because they're undefeated are they even close to the top 4. And I say that because I look right at Houston, their opponent for the AAC Conference Championship game. Houston lost their first game of the season against a Power 5 opponent in Texas Tech. Say what you want about Texas Tech. They lost the first game of the season by 17. Not a good performance. Since then, they've gone undefeated. Okay? They are ranked 21, the Houston Cougars. So you're telling me that the team that's playing the exact same opponents, and yeah, I know they didn't play a ranked team technically, but a team that played the same exact opponents is 21 with only one more loss than Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's undefeated playing the same opponents. I know the Notre Dame game wins, but do you see how that discrepancy doesn't make sense from the college football playoff? How could you rank Houston so low? Because don't you value the opponents that Cincinnati beat? If you don't value them, then you can't put Cincinnati in the top. That's where I see it. If Houston wins, why isn't Houston in the top 10 after that game? Maybe they will be, but it's that's the problem with me is they value the opponents because they thought Cincinnati would be good, and then Cincinnati's won every game. They don't value the same exact teams and same exact opponents when Houston's on the other side. And that, I know the wins haven't been as impressive, but they still are 11-0 in their last 11 games, and that's the same with Cincinnati. So
no, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think what Cincinnati and what the committee was looking at was, okay, after that big win against Notre Dame, I think all eyes were on Notre Dame to say, okay, are they going to rebound and respond, which they did. And they have now gotten themselves into the number 6 position with only one loss. So if Notre Dame would have shit the bed and would have not played well, I think that would have hurt Cincinnati because it would have been oh, well, okay, that win isn't as big. And I don't think Cincinnati would actually be number 4 if Notre Dame wasn't 11-1.
It's a good
if
point.
Notre Dame had slipped up, then I think Cincinnati would probably be 8, 9, or 10. And your argument would be more valid. But because Notre Dame has played well and bounced back, I think that makes that Cincinnati win look even better, right? If Houston would have beat Texas A&M, and then Texas A&M would have went on to beat Alabama, I think Houston would be somewhere in the top 10. So it comes down to simply Houston losing, yes, albeit at the beginning of the year, which if you're going to have a loss, it is better to do it in the beginning of the year than in the end. But still, I think it comes down simply to the fact Cincinnati beat Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame rebounded and played very well. And Cincinnati wanted that because that just elevated that win for them. I mean, I think it's just
sure.
No,
that's a good point, and it is Notre Dame's fault this is happening. Yeah, you're right. It's Notre Dame's fault that it's happening. Right. And Jared, they got punished, okay, for this. No, I'm joking. They didn't get punished because they allowed Cincinnati in. Number 5 and number 6, like I mentioned, were Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. We will get into Oklahoma State and Notre Dame and all the other conference championship games a little bit later because I have actually a bunch of questions to ask you too. And we'll get right back into this discussion. But number 6, and still has a shot at the college football playoff, is Notre Dame. And they have no head coach. Jared, I have never seen this in my life. This is ridiculous of college football to do this during the season. I kind of love it, and I kind of am super annoyed at Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley and all these guys. But, Jared, your comments your thoughts on Brian Kelly jumping out of a college football playoff appearance potentially to go to LSU for the bag, essentially.
You know what I mean? I was shocked at first. I'll say that, right? Because you're so right. This team has a chance to get into the college football playoff, and all of a sudden it's oh, I'm jumping ship, right? I'm taking that 10-year, $95 million. I mean, $95 million. I mean, who's really turning that down? And it's LSU. So it's not surprising. Apparently, from Notre Dame's AD that spoke today, he came out and said he wasn't surprised. He said from the last couple of weeks, even going a month back, that he could just tell by the way that Coach Kelly, was kind of responding and the way that he was
Wow.
acting around the team was that, maybe he's talking to some other teams and maybe he's not going to be here. And so this wasn't a surprise to the people inside that Notre Dame locker room.
Wow.
I think it sucks for the players, right, that have poured their heart and soul, that came to that school for Brian Kelly, right? Not all of those players went there because it's Notre Dame. I mean, I'm sure some of them did. Maybe some of them grew up in the area, but a lot of those players went to that school because they got the trust from Brian Kelly that he was going to be there, right?
True.
And guide
Very
them
true.
potentially to national championship, which he had an opportunity to do. So to me, it's interesting because we've seen coaches, right, like either get fired or move on to another job kind of in season before the season ends. But a lot of times those coaches still stay, just like Ed Orgeron with LSU, right? Yes, he was basically fired midway through the year, but he worked out an agreement with the school to where he was like, hey, I'm going to finish out the year. Like, I owe it to these athletes that I went and sat in their homes, and recruited them. I
True.
owe it to them to finish out the year. And so you're right. The fact that Brian Kelly won't be on the sidelines, to me, is just unreal. Also, the AD came out today and said he's not going to name an intern. So I don't know who's going to actually
Bro.
coach. Like, who's going to make a decision? Like,
Jared, this is crazy.
if it's the fourth quarter and it's 4th and 1, who's going to make that call to go for it or not? Like, he said he's not going to name an intern. It's just going to be a collective, coaching staff that's going to come together, supposedly. Like, I don't know how that works. I've never seen this in any level of football at all, where there is not one guy making the final decision. I think that's going to come back and hurt Notre Dame.
Dude, it's insane. Okay, I've never seen anything like this in sports. A coach quit on a team in a championship run. Dude, this would literally be like my Arizona Cardinals. And let me just say, there is some I almost just cussed. Some wacky rumors about Cliff Kingsbury right now that I don't want to hear out in the Twitter universe. Like, stay off my coach, okay? Leave him alone. But it would be like if Cliff Kingsbury, last game of the season, or maybe even during the Cowboys game when we're playing your Cowboys on January 3rd, after that game, the Cardinals are going to the playoffs and they have to play the next week to get that number 1 seed, and Cliff just leaves and goes, you know what? I'm gonna go coach the Dolphins. And you're like, what? The Dolphins don't even have, they're done. So, or like Dave Roberts quitting on the Dodgers in the division series and just being like, we might have a chance at winning the championship, but I just got the bag at this other team. The Angels just threw me the bag, so I'm going to go to them. It's ridiculous.
I mean, listen, money talks. Here's the thing I will say. To me, this is interesting because if I thought Brian Kelly was going to leave Notre Dame, I thought it would have been to the NFL. This seems like somewhat of a lateral move, right? You can say what you want about LSU and Notre Dame recruiting and who's better. Like, Notre Dame is a legitimate program academic-wise and obviously football-wise, right? They have been to the college football playoff. I believe it's 2 out of the last 4 years. Now, obviously, they haven't had a chance because they've gotten blown out, but at least they've gotten there. LSU has the 2019 national championship to hang their hat on. But other than that, what have they really done? So to me, for Brian Kelly, yes, you're probably getting more money at LSU, but are you actually, what is the real advantage to going there? And here's the one thing I will say, and I want to get your opinion on this as well. As you very well know, LSU is in the SEC. That is basically a mini NFL league, right? We know how much better the SEC conference is compared to all the other conferences out there. The South is different when it comes to recruiting and when it comes to the standards that they have of winning, right? Brian Kelly, when he first took over at Notre Dame, that team was in a major hole. They sucked. They were not relevant. They were nowhere near college football playoff status. That's kind of where LSU is right now, right? So it's like he built up that Notre Dame program, got them to where they are, has a chance to lead them to the college football playoff, and then he goes, nope, I'm good, guys. I'm going to go take over an LSU program that hasn't done jack shit in the last 2 years. So to me, it's more of a lateral move because, like I said, yes, you're getting more money, but you're getting the same type of recruits, right? I don't know. To me, it's just Why not go to the NFL? If you're going to make that type of move and leave your program, leave your players, you're doing it to go to another school and another university. I don't know, man. I just think he should have gone to the NFL or done something like that, or can fulfill agreement and stay at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, especially this year, man. Like, I get, obviously, with what Lincoln Riley did, that was literally the day before. Like, that's a little different because Oklahoma just lost out their chance at being, potentially even in the New Year's Six Bowl with that loss to Oklahoma State. We all thought they were kind of frauds the whole season, and then they lose 2 out of their last 3 games, and it's like, okay, well, they really were frauds. This is not a top, 10 team. This is a top 20 team, maybe. But this is just different, man. You got to stick this out. Like, you got to try to win a championship. And I'll say this, Jared. You said something a second ago I disagree with. I disagree with that this is going to hurt Notre Dame. Jared, let me just lay this scenario out to you. Georgia wins the game against Alabama pretty bad. They win by like 3 touchdowns, right? 17 points, something like that. It's not really a game. Alabama doesn't have much chance, much like the Michigan-Ohio State game, right? Maybe even worse.
Okay.
So Alabama has 2 losses. Oklahoma State loses to Baylor. Okay, obviously Baylor moved down the rankings already. The committee doesn't respect them, so Baylor probably doesn't get in. Notre Dame slips into that number 4 spot. Okay, you got Cincinnati at number 3. You got Michigan at number 2, barring Michigan blowing it against Iowa. Can you imagine that team, Jared? How hyped you'd be. You're like, our coach quit on us, and now we get to play number 1. I'm all for that game. Okay, I disagree. I think whatever bowl game this team plays in, they are going to be the most impressive team they've been all season, because they're going to shove it to Brian Kelly and be like, see, this is what you missed. This is what we really were as a team. I don't think this is going to hurt them. I think this is going to help them. And whether they play in the Rose Bowl or the Peach Bowl or college football playoff, I think it's going to be entertaining as hell. And Notre Dame either is really, really close to beating a Georgia or wins their other bowl game. That's what I'll say. I'm excited to see this Notre Dame team play. And you know what, Jared? I'm not a Notre Dame fan either. But I kind of feel bad about what happened to them. That's not fair. We wouldn't like that if a USC coach, if Pete Carroll quit back in those days, after the UCLA game or something like that.
I mean, Pete Carroll kind of did quit, but we're not going to go down that route.
It's different.
That was a long time ago, so we're just going to leave that there. No, you're right. I think you bring up a valid point for sure, and you're right. I mean, if I was a Notre Dame player, I'd be motivated as heck to go out there and say, hey, man, like, you left us, we don't need you. Whatever bowl game we get, we're going to go out there and prove that we are talented enough and that we either should have been in the college football playoff or we deserve to be in the college football playoff. But if they go against Georgia doesn't care. Georgia could care less if they had Brian Kelly, if they had Lincoln Riley, if they had everyone. Georgia is on a whole nother level. Georgia is going to go in there and stomp over whoever they play. I think Alabama is really the only team that probably has the best chance, right, to unseat them and give them their first loss of the season. I mean, if Michigan wants to run for 250 yards again like they did against Ohio State, I think they have a chance. Cincinnati, no way. And Georgia right now, the way that they're playing, how Kirby Smart has his team playing so sound football on both sides of the ball, I don't see them really having much slack against any of these teams. So, yes, if Notre Dame has to play Georgia, no way. If they play any other opponent, I agree with you. I think they have a chance.
Yeah, well, we'll agree to disagree on that, but I think this is going to help this team. I think this is absolutely going to help this team. And Brian Kelly, good luck at LSU, man, because you had some rough years at Notre Dame too. It's not like you had it was clean and great like it's been for Saban and other guys. It was tough for a couple of years, there in Notre Dame. So you did rebuild your status as a college football kind of legendary head coach, but still, good luck to him. All right, Jared. Now I know this one's gonna make us a little bit happier. Okay, you know me. I'm a UCLA fan like I am a USC fan. I maybe favor UCLA a little bit more, but oh my goodness, USC landing Lincoln Riley is Jared, the biggest move in college football, I don't know. Maybe since Saban went to Alabama. I mean, legitimately. Like
Bigger than Brian Kelly going to LSU.
True. No, absolutely. But I think when you look at Saban coming from the Dolphins to Alabama and what he did for Alabama, now a couple of those years were a little tough in the beginning, but that's natural. Lincoln Riley, I have a feeling, is going to turn USC back into a top 10 team. And Jared, it already started. Today, a day after the press conference, USC has already landed not one, but two 5-star recruits, including a quarterback. And guess what, Jared? They're from Southern California, right? It's exactly what every USC fan has wanted. We need to get back to controlling California. Don't let this Cali guys go to Clemson, like DJ Uyulungale, and don't let Bryce Young go to Alabama, and don't let GT Daniels go to Georgia, and all these other guys, right? It's happened so many times the last couple of years. And look what USC did. They just got the number one quarterback.
Number two.
Well, number one in California.
The number one in California. Archie Manning is just ahead of Malachi.
That's a little different. I think Arch Manning's a little overrated based on his last name. I'm going to say Malachi Nelson's actually the best college football prospect.
I'm not going to argue with that. I'm just saying I'm looking at the rankings, and right now Malachi's number 2. But you're right, number 1 in the state. We'll take it.
Yeah, no, and that's what's important, right? UCLA and USC need to get back to owning California. And with Lincoln Riley, we've already seen guys leave Oklahoma. Maybe they come to USC. Maybe they go somewhere else, right? Lincoln Riley is like one of those coaches that a lot of people wanted to play for, like you were saying, with Brian Kelly and Notre Dame. A lot of people went to Notre Dame specifically only because of Brian Kelly, right? Now, a lot of people are going to Oklahoma because of Lincoln Riley, right? Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Spencer Rattler, right? All these top guys. And now for USC, they do the exact same thing. And Jared, I see the Coliseum being like packed in complete red again. I almost want to go to that opening day game, whoever they play. I'll look it up in a second who they play to begin the season next year. But like, the crowd's going to be hyped to see Lincoln Riley's debut at the Coliseum, and you hope USC does deliver something. I'm not going to say USC is going to be even a top 10 team next year, but when you get these guys in the next couple of years with Malachi Nelson and even Jackson Dart, he's a great quarterback too, that they have right now. USC, I think, is back, and it took a coach doing something shady to Oklahoma, but USC is back. That's my opinion, and what an amazing and great hire for USC.
Oh, they're back. And they're back because of what you just said. They just got 2 5-star recruits less than 24 hours after Lincoln Riley's press conference, right? Like, that doesn't happen if Lincoln Riley is not there. Every single note that I wrote down, it has to do with recruiting, right? Because that is what USC has simply lacked, right? They have everything else, right? They've got the sunshine, the great weather, all the facilities, the Coliseum, the alumni. They have everything else. They simply have not been able to keep their in-state recruits home, right? Just like you mentioned, and I don't need to go over it again, but they get Malachi, right? And I think that's going to continue to go. I think there's already been 6 or 7 Oklahoma recruits that have already decommitted since Lincoln Riley left. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them are going to come to USC, but I think that shows the influence that Lincoln Riley has on recruiting and how far of a reach he really does have. So not only is he going to implement himself right away here in California, but he's going to, I think, continue to poach from Texas, from Oklahoma, and from all those other states and bring those kids here. Yeah. So you're right. I think if you expect USC to be in the college football playoff next year, I think that's a little far-fetched. But in 2 years from now, right, when he's had 2 off seasons to recruit, to really implement his program and his style, USC should be right there, right? This is not a rebuild. Let's give you 3, 4, 5 years and let's see what happens. No, this is you're coming in right now. Here are the keys to the kingdom. We expect results in 2 years, right? This is USC, who has not won anything really since Pete Carroll. I guess you can say the 1 year, I think it was 2017, with Clay Helton when they went 11-3. They had that Rose Bowl game when Sam Darnold beat Penn State. That was a great moment for USC. But since then, right, and the years ahead. And even the couple of years when Steve Sarkisian was there and Lane Kiffin, they haven't done jack. So this is the biggest moment for USC since Pete Carroll was there. No doubt. I do also want to let you in on this, Ned. Do you know about Lincoln Riley's contract details?
No, I don't. I actually want to know what it is.
So I did a little bit of digging, and don't take me word for word on this, because the source where I got this from, he also said this isn't like 100% guaranteed. This is just what he thinks he knows, right? And I'm not going to name names, but $100 million, $110 million contract, right? And it's at least for 7 years. USC is buying both of Lincoln Riley's homes in Norman.
Stop it.
For over $500K, over asking.
Stop it.
So that's just like an extra $1 million in bonus. They're buying him a $6 million home in LA. And he gets unlimited use of the private jet 24/7 for him and his family. It's not too bad. Not too bad. There's just a couple.
That's got to be it. There's no way that's real. But like, if it is, that's awesome.
There's just a couple reasons why he chose to leave Oklahoma and come to USC.
Well, remember, his meeting only lasted like a couple hours with USC. Like, maybe they were just like, hey, yeah, we want you to be a coach. Here's what we're going to pay you to be a head coach. But also, like, here's your house. Here's a private jet. Like, this is what you see on, like, Entourage or Ballers, or, like, these shows that kind of have ridiculous, like, storylines to them. Insane. Good for USC, because I think, Jared, the biggest shot on USC's management recently has been that they don't give a crap about USC football. So clearly they were just hiding in the bushes and just joking around with us and being like, no, we actually care. Like, just wait till what we do. Who cares about this?
Well, this was them, I think, kind of resting on their past success, right? And you can talk about their previous ADs, their previous coaching staff, and all of that. And I think they were really relying on their success from the mid to early 2000s, as far as their recruitment went, right? Like, we're USC because of where we are, because of what we've done in the past. We're just automatically going to keep these 5-star recruits in state. Well, guess what? All these other teams have caught up, like you just mentioned. And so basically USC said, we have to throw the bag at someone. And if it's going to be anyone, it might as well be Lincoln Riley. So I don't fault him for coming here. I also don't fault USC for doing what they did and throwing all of that at him and his family, if those intend to be true, because USC had to do something to change that culture, right? I'm sorry, this is not University of South Florida that we're talking about, right? This is USC, one of the most prominent schools, not only in California, but in the country, right? They are on a national stage. They deserve a national coach. They have the talent. And I think that's probably one of the most frustrating things, is even though they're losing some recruits, they still have 4- and 5-star talents there. It's mainly been the coaching, the AD, and the people that are in charge that have misled these athletes, right? Now they have a legitimate coach who knows how to win, knows how to recruit, knows how to get these players to the NFL, which is more than likely all of their goals, right? So, like I said, to me, this is a 2-year project. Next year, they might have, 2 or 3 losses, a couple bumps in the road. I fully expect that. In 2 years, this team better be competing for a college football championship, or I'm already going to say this is a bust.
Jared, you ever heard of a guy named Matt Corral? Maybe a certain
just a little bit. Might have heard him once or twice.
Heisman Trophy candidate. He went to Long Beach Poly. So that means Alabama, Clemson, Ole Miss, Georgia. I know Georgia's starter now is different, but like all these guys should have been USC's quarterback. They had a choice of all these guys, and they messed it up.
Clemson, DJ. I'm not going to say his last name, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, and that's obviously been a little bit of a disaster too over there. But it's not. We'll talk about that another day. Really interesting stuff. Like I said, Jared, I think this is the biggest head coaching move since Nick Saban from the Dolphins to Alabama. I think that's how much of an impact this is going to have. Maybe USC isn't Alabama, right? But this is a big move. Also, to mention, the defensive coordinator for Oklahoma has also moved over to USC as well. So
that would be my one question mark, because Oklahoma has, if there is a knock on Lincoln Riley's resume, it is the fact that his defenses have been god awful, right? Yeah. There is no, yes, they score 40, 50, 60 points a game, and that defense automatically looks better because of that. But if they're in a close game situation and you're leaning on your defense to get a stop, or maybe your offense just isn't clicking for a specific game and your defense has to come up big, that is the one area where Lincoln Riley needs to get better, right? I get the relationship. I get you want to bring all of your former guys with you, to Southern California and all that, but something needs to change. Maybe it's the talent level, right? I would say that USC and Oklahoma are equal when it comes to recruiting, but maybe USC has some better talent that this defensive coordinator can work with. But that would be an area of focus that I would look at, especially because of now. I mean, look at USC's defense this year and last year. They've been horrible. They've been awful. They can't stop anyone. So that is a huge issue, and probably one of the biggest things that they need to work on.
Yeah, no, I agree. That is something different, but I think having familiarity and kind of moving a lot of the current USC staff out of there and not retaining a lot of them, I think that's the smart move, because the culture at USC has kind of sucked. All right. Brian Kelly to LSU, Lincoln Riley to Oklahoma. Jared, who the hell is going to be next? Is it going to be Lane Kiffin? Is it going to be Chip Kelly? Is it going to be Luke Fickell?
Urban Meyer? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe Urban Meyer. I've heard from today that a lot of people don't even want to touch him, So we'll see. Lot of moving parts though in college football. It's fun. All right, let's get back into this really quickly. So, like I was mentioning, Oklahoma State is number 5. They are 11-1. Their only loss coming on the road by 3 points to Iowa State. Obviously, Iowa State, a pretty average college football team, but still a Big 12 team. And then you look at Cincinnati, like I mentioned, 12-0, right? But what would they do against Iowa State, right? Like, it's questionable. Jared, what happens, in your opinion, if Oklahoma beats Baylor and Oklahoma struggles against Houston and wins? You think Oklahoma State sneaks in the college football playoff over Cincinnati? You think they sneak in over Alabama too? Specifically I guess what I'm portraying here though is that like Georgia and Alabama tied, which is impossible. So yeah, does Oklahoma State have a chance if Cincinnati wins?
Well, I think Oklahoma State has a chance regardless, because in my head, Georgia's going to beat Alabama more convincingly than not, which is going to push Alabama out, because that will give them 2 losses.
But but that's what I'm saying. What if Alabama's really close? It comes back down to it goes to OT, or it comes down the final play. Like,
I think really going to out? I think they're still out.
That's great.
Here's why.
Okay.
You lose to Texas A&M midway through the year, and then you have that horrible performance against Auburn, which was last week, which was the most fresh game that's still in everyone's mind, right? Like, I get it, you won, but you had 3 points with I don't know, what was it, a minute 30 left in the fourth quarter? I'm sorry, but that is a team, in my opinion. That is not a Nick Saban, Alabama-led team. It's just not. So if Alabama loses, period, I don't care if it's by 3 points, 1 point, it doesn't matter. To me, if an Alabama loss means that Alabama is out of the college football playoff, and Oklahoma State, there you go, open spot. It's that simple for me. I don't think there's any way that Alabama gets in unless they win.
Okay, that's fair.
And then if here's the thing, I think Oklahoma State wants Alabama to lose, because if Alabama beats Georgia, then I think that's even more of a kind of a hiccup, because Georgia then would have to say, well, that was only our first loss. And if Georgia only loses by 3 points, I think they're still going to have a convincing argument to get in. So Oklahoma is really rooting for Alabama to lose.
Let me say this: Georgia's in no matter what. Okay, I don't think there's anything. I mean, realistically, if Georgia loses a close game to Alabama, they're still number 1. Like legitimately, why wouldn't they be number 1? Maybe you put Alabama above them as Alabama beat them, right? But they're at least number 2.
No.
Right? And then I agree with you on that. Georgia is a top 2 team no matter what happens this weekend. In my opinion, there's no way you can rank Georgia behind Michigan, who lost to Michigan State. There's just no way. Alabama is at worst a top 10 team. Michigan State clearly is not a top 10 team. Realistically, Alabama at worst is a top 7 team. Okay. So yeah, it's going to be interesting with Georgia. But let me just say this. So let's say Alabama beats Georgia, right? Because I want to go back to my original question. My question is, does Oklahoma State jump over Cincinnati somehow, even if Cincinnati wins? Is that possible? You don't think so?
I don't think so. No, Cincinnati has done enough. They've been in the college football playoff for the second week in a row. The committee has recognized them now, even though they're only at number 4. So obviously they're that first team, to be eliminated potentially. But no, I think Cincinnati has done enough to where as long as they win their conference championship game against Houston, we've already gone through Cincinnati and Houston's record. We don't need to go through back that again. So as long as Cincinnati wins, they are in. Oklahoma is looking for a loss from Michigan, Alabama, or Cincinnati, right? It's as simple as that. Georgia loses, doesn't matter because Georgia's staying in. So to me, no.
So fair enough. Let me ask you this question next. Who outside of the top 6 do you see still having a chance?
Absolutely nobody.
Nobody. Okay, well, so here we'll disagree on this. Because I think Ole Miss doesn't have a chance because they don't play a game this weekend. Okay. I'm gonna give Baylor a chance. Okay, because if they go in and beat Oklahoma State pretty handily, realistically they should be over Notre Dame. They should be, even with Notre Dame having 1 loss, it's still 11 wins. I know they have 2 losses, but I think they go ahead of Notre Dame. Right? They go ahead of Ohio State because Ohio State's idle, right? And they go ahead of Oklahoma State. And then, I think you'd need Cincinnati to lose, but like it's that easy, Jared. Like it's not even that far-fetched. Baylor just kind of needs Cincinnati to lose realistically, and they have a really good chance at making the college football playoff, in my opinion.
See, I don't like that because here's the thing. I'm looking at Baylor's schedule right now, right, throughout the whole season. They already lost to Oklahoma State once by 10. Now, that was the 5th game of the year, so midway through this season, right? But still, that was a loss at Oklahoma State. Their second loss was at an unranked TCU. So they've already had 2 losses.
That's tough. Well, no, but Jared, we know. We talk about
look at their last 3 wins. Look at their last 3 wins. 27-14 against Oklahoma, 20-10 at Kansas State, 27-24 against Texas Tech. Those aren't impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that's due to the fact they just run the ball a lot, and their quarterback has been banged up the last 2 games. That's it. It's a legitimate excuse. But here's the thing, Jared. If one of their losses is to Oklahoma State, and then they beat Oklahoma State, remember I said they beat Oklahoma State handily. At that point, that loss earlier in the season doesn't really matter because they proved that they can beat that team. So technically, they're like a 1-loss team, and that's why I think
more of a wash.
Yeah, I think that's why they jump ahead of a Cincinnati, because if Cincinnati loses, well, Notre Dame lost to Cincinnati, so why the hell should Notre Dame be ahead of Cincinnati, right? Like, no matter what, technically, Notre Dame shouldn't be ahead of Cincinnati because they lost. Now, we might disagree on that because we think Notre Dame has played a much tougher schedule, and they've handled some of their opponents that were much better than Cincinnati's opponents. I think Baylor has a chance. I also think that if Ohio State still has a chance, Jared.
What?
Listen, no, listen. Hold on. This is why.
Drinking?
This is why.
What are you looking at right now?
Let me outline it for you. Jared, they're 10-2. Okay? You know what?
You can't make it. Did you see the game against Michigan?
I forgot.
They couldn't stop a nosebleed. Michigan could have said, we're lining up in I formation. Here's the exact running play that we're going to do. It's going to be a pitch to the right, and Ohio State wouldn't have been able to stop it. Ohio State was hot garbage on defense, and their offense wasn't much better. I'm sorry, but after that performance, it's one thing to lose to an Oregon team who was pretty good throughout most of the year at the beginning of the season. It's an entirely another thing to lose against your bitter rival the way that they did at the end of the year when it is fresh in everyone's minds. I'm sorry. Those 2 losses and the fact that they moved down 5, I'm surprised they didn't move down more. Someone on the level, I was them. I would not put Ohio State at 7. Ohio State would be like number 10.
Yeah.
Maybe. Ohio State looked like hot garbage. There is no way that they would get it. Listen, they would probably beat Cincinnati, but I would not go out of the far way to say that Cincinnati would not be able to beat Ohio State as of right now. Like, Ohio State is reeling. There's no way that Ohio State has any chance, nor do they deserve to be in the college football playoff.
Well, yeah, and that's I mean, but that's why it's like, why rank Baylor below them, right? Because I think you look at Baylor, it's like Baylor does have. Really, I get it's because of the losses, but if Baylor does beat Oklahoma State, they then can't jump Baylor above. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, this is what the college football playoffs problem is. Like, why the hell did they move Ole Miss above Baylor? Because they know that there's a college football, there's a conference game happening for the conference championship, and so they just put Ole Miss ahead so they'd be ranked higher. That's stupid. They shouldn't do that kind of stuff. So it's frustrating because when you look, and what I was originally going to say is, obviously if Alabama loses handily to Georgia and Cincinnati loses to Houston, Oklahoma State loses to Baylor, I think Ohio State's better than Baylor, but I forgot about Notre Dame, right? And do I think Alabama's 2 losses are worse than Ohio State's? No, because one of them is to number 1. So it's kind of, I mean, there's still technically a chance there, because if you have Georgia and Michigan 1-2, right, easy wins. Alabama loses, Cincinnati loses, Oklahoma State loses. I mean, technically you could put Notre Dame 3, Ohio State 4. I just don't think they'll move Alabama behind. I disagree with my own opinion. I don't think Alabama goes below Ohio. so, but I mean, it's interesting, right? When I outline it that way, Jared, it is kind of possible that they get in, right?
I guess never say never, but I mean, I think we're reaching a little bit at this point.
True. I do think I'm rooting for Baylor. I do think Baylor, if they win handily, they have a chance. They're only 2. It's interesting. It's gonna be interesting. It's fun. All right, let's move on. Oh, actually, Jerry, no, tell me what. Sorry, let's predict it. What do we think happens after this weekend? What is your college football Final Four, your college football playoff officially after this weekend?
All right, here we go. So I got Georgia beating Alabama, Georgia being the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. Number 2, I have Michigan. I think Michigan is going to handle Iowa. I think Iowa is a team that always plays tough. They always play rugged. They've got a good defense. But if Michigan plays anything like they did against Ohio State, I don't think Iowa has a chance. And I think Michigan's riding high. Jim Harbaugh's, feeling well. He's finally got his first win against Ohio State. He also came out this week and did a really good deed. He said from here on out, every bonus that Harbaugh gets, he's going to give it to his coaching staff that, lost money or didn't get a bonus from COVID. So I think that team is just really gelling at the right time right now. So I got Michigan staying at number 2, winning the Big Ten title right there. Obviously, because Alabama lost to Georgia, and what I had just previously said, I think Alabama is out.
You're out. Yep.
I am going to put I got to move Cincinnati up to number 3, right? You can technically keep them at number 4, but I'm moving them up to number 3 because they've been undefeated throughout the entire year, 0 losses on their record. And then I think Oklahoma State will beat Baylor, and because of that Alabama loss, there's an opening spot, and you got Oklahoma State in there at number 4. Now, I don't necessarily like Oklahoma State in there at number 4 because I don't like. I mean, I guess anyone against against Georgia is a bad matchup, but like, is Oklahoma State really going to be able to contain a Georgia offense? I don't know. They might be able to score some points, but that would be probably one of the most lopsided games of the entire weekend there. So number 1, Georgia, number 2, Michigan, number 3, Cincinnati, number 4, Oklahoma State. Probably not the 4 teams that you thought of when we started the year.
No. Okay, Jared, me and you is not going to be the same. I'll tell you that right now. Okay.
Oh, God.
Georgia's number 1. I think it's a close game against Alabama. Let me preface that. Close win. Maybe even it goes to OT. Georgia
I already know where you're going, but okay.
They barely beat Alabama. Michigan wins against Iowa. It doesn't matter how they win. They're going to win. It's essentially Michigan is a revved up, more sexy version of Iowa, right? With better players, right? Here's where it gets crazy, okay? Jared, I think that we're going to keep up with a lot of these upsets that happened all year. I don't think this college football year just ends up being normal and we have this boring old Final Four. Not to say that your teams are boring. But I think Cincinnati's going to lose. I think all the whole year is coming up to this moment, and I think they're going to choke. And this is all after what I said, right? Jerry, I said they've kind of struggled this whole last part of the season. Why would they actually beat a pretty solid team in Houston? So I'm going to go Cincinnati loses.
I mean, you're staying consistent, so I can't fault you for that.
Jared, I'm also going Oklahoma State's losing. I think Baylor upsets them. I think Oklahoma State has kind of played with fire the whole year. When you look at a lot of their scores as well, it's a lot of close games. It's a lot of like one possession games, right, Jared? Sometimes your luck runs out. I think that their luck runs out. Oklahoma State loses. So here's what I got. I got Notre Dame.
Oh, God.
Jared.
Oh, God.
I got Notre Dame moving to number 3. Notre Dame at number 3. Okay? Notre Dame at number 3 and Alabama at number 4. I think Alabama stays in. And we get a rematch. We get a rematch of Alabama and Georgia.
I wouldn't be mad about that.
No, right?
That'd be kind of fun.
And then we get Notre Dame all pissed off because of their coach, right, playing Michigan. I'd love those two matchups. Legendary matchup. It's happened. It's two legendary head coaches. Like it was, right? And really I don't know who wins those games realistically. So I'm gonna do that. I think the committee ruins college football and keeps Alabama in with 2 losses. I think that's what's gonna happen. Close win by Georgia. Notre Dame fits in because you have to put them in. They fit into number 3 because you can't put in them behind. But I don't think Baylor has done enough compared to Alabama with 2 losses to get in. I think it would need Alabama getting blown out for Baylor to get in. But I mean, essentially what I'm saying is it's either going to be Baylor or Alabama at number 4, in my opinion. And it's going to be based on how those 2 games go. Does Alabama get blown out? And does Baylor blow out Oklahoma State? And so I have both of those. I have Alabama close win or close loss. So,
hey, listen, your list is fun. I'll give you that.
I love it.
Your list is a lot more fun than mine, right? Here's my thing with Notre Dame too, and this has been forever, right? Like, can they please get into a conference? The fact that they're an independent and they never play a conference championship game kills me. It's like you've done all that work for the entire year. Right, you've played well. Obviously, you have your 1 loss to Cincinnati, but you've gotten over that. You've gotten over that hurdle, and you basically bounce back, right? But then it's like you get a week off, and I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, sometimes I think you can just. It's not like that we forget about Notre Dame, but the more fresh games are Georgia and Alabama, right? It is Houston, Cincinnati, Michigan, Iowa. I don't understand why Notre Dame and every other sport that they have at that program. They are in the ACC, except for football. I think at some point, I don't know, maybe because Brian Kelly leaves, something changes, but I think at some point, Notre Dame has to get into a conference championship because to me, I think that only helps them. Like, to me, if Notre Dame was in a conference championship game and they won more so convincingly, I'd probably be more on board with your pick of putting Notre Dame in the college football playoff. But the fact that they're not, and they get a bye week, and we're kind of going to forget about them for a little bit because we're going to be focused on the rest of these games. To me, that's not a good look. And that already has a loss to Cincinnati. So, like, do yourselves a favor. Get into a conference first of all, more than likely the ACC, where you can probably dominate. It would be you and Clemson fighting for that spot, right? And probably those 2 teams every single year playing in the championship game because Florida State. Garbage, Miami, garbage, right? So I don't really get why they are not in a conference because to me that's only gonna help them.
Well, and Jared, they've been punished so far with Oklahoma State jumping ahead of them, right? And that's just due to the fact that at the end of their schedule, unfortunately, they had Stanford and Oklahoma State had Oklahoma. But they already have been punished, and essentially what the committee's saying is, hey. Not only are we putting Oklahoma State ahead of you, but like if they have another game, if they win, they're in, even with 1 loss. So Notre Dame will get screwed over if Oklahoma State wins, and it's simply because they don't have a conference championship game.
Do that, right? If you're not going to take my advice, because apparently I know it all, right? If you're not going to do that, then like the end of the year,
schedule game.
Your games have to they have to mean something. Like you should be playing now that Lincoln Riley's at USC. Notre Dame should be begging to play USC as their last game of the year, right? Like their last 4 games, they played Navy, Georgia Tech, and Stanford. No ranked team. Their last ranked team that they played was Cincinnati, where they lost, right? So to me, yes, they're 11-1. They're playing well. We've already talked about that, but it's like, who have they played towards the end of the year? They haven't really played anyone. And so I think that factors in as well. If you don't want to get into a conference, at least have a tough schedule at the end of the year to where the committee can say, okay, they have, they've played well against good competition. Because Virginia, Georgia Tech, Stanford, like those just aren't, they aren't sexy teams. They're not good teams. They're crappy teams that Notre Dame just whooped on. That's like beginning of the year schedule type stuff, not end of the year.
But Jerry, look what they did though. I mean, they, after the loss to Cincinnati, they struggled a little bit on the road against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, we know that's always a tough place to play. They beat USC by 2 possessions. They beat UNC, who was a pretty solid team this year, by 10. Blowout Navy. They only allowed 9 points in those 3 games before Stanford, who they beat by 31. So they're doing what they're supposed to do against those horrible teams. Potentially before the season.
Why not do that at the beginning of the year? They're independent. They get to make their entire schedule. It's
well,
not
no, but
like
Jared,
they have a conference where I'm literally saying they can make their own schedule.
They probably thought Stanford was going to be better. They probably thought USC was going to be better, right? So and they probably even thought Wisconsin was going to be better. So it's like, I don't really blame them for their schedule. I do think they need to schedule more. Like Cincinnati's a good scheduling thing. Good job for you. But like, you need to schedule Clemson. Okay? You need to schedule, the Alabamas, Ole Miss, these teams that are really, even Baylor, like Oklahoma. Like, I agree. And when you actually look at Notre Dame's like strength of schedule, it's like there's a reason Oklahoma State's ahead of them, because Oklahoma State has 1 loss and they've just played more ranked teams. That's why. I will say this, because we need to get to the NFL. If Oklahoma State and Cincinnati win, Jared, it's the exact same as yours. If they win, in my opinion. But my actual projection is that those teams are going to lose, and that's why I have my craziness. But I don't want to sit here and sound like I'm going to put like Alabama in, even if Oklahoma State and Cincinnati. If Cincinnati wins, they're number 3, and Oklahoma State wins, they're number 4. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's okay. Basically, I'm just more realistic. That's okay. That's what we've decided.
Why would you?
Moving on.
All right, Jared. Moving on. Now, you're not going to be very happy about this, but we need to get to the NFL. And the most talked about team in the National Football League, it's not my Arizona Cardinals. It's not the Packers. They're close. They have a pretty talked about quarterback. It's not the Chiefs. It's not Bill Belichick and the Patriots. It's them boys. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Okay? The Dallas Cowboys could not stop the Raiders on Thanksgiving. And it's 2 weeks in a row that the Cowboys have not played good in primetime games, right? And like I said, they've gone 3 out of 4 this month with only a win against Atlanta, which was impressive, but it's only the Falcons. Jared, what's the state of the Dallas Cowboys? How does this team turn back into a contender?
We were doing so well, right? I mean, I really don't want to talk about this topic right now because Dallas is reeling. They go 6-1 to begin of the year, and all of a sudden they are now 1-3.
Yeah.
And to me, it's very simple, right? You hear reporters, you hear people on Twitter, you hear everyone saying they've had injuries, they've had COVID problems. Dak had the calf. Zeke is banged up right now. Like, there's all these things. Mike McCarthy isn't going to coach this upcoming game because he's in COVID protocol. All these excuses and reasons why Dallas hasn't been able to put together a full game, and they've been reeling a little bit. You want to know why Dallas isn't playing well? They don't run the effing football. That's why, right? And this is somewhat of a family podcast. That's why I said effing, because I would really just like to say the actual word. When you have Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, and you have a combined 19 rushes for 64 yards against a Las Vegas Raiders team that is not that very good at stopping the run, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it does not take a rocket scientist to realize that you have to run the ball in order to keep your defense that is not playing well off of the field, right? Like we talk about it all the time, complementary football, right? Your offense has to help out your defense. Your defense has to help out your offense, get turnovers, that type of thing. Special teams has to do their part as well as far as field position goes. Dallas right now is playing like me ball. It's like offense versus defense versus special teams. It is not a complementary, like one team, one common goal right now. They have the pieces. I don't want to hear about the injuries. Every team is injured, right? Aaron Rodgers was down 3 receivers, Devontae Adams and his other 2 receivers, and he went into your Arizona Cardinals stadium on a short week on a Thursday and beat the number 1 team in the league in the Arizona Cardinals. So I don't want to hear about Dallas' injuries and their COVID and all the other crap that they have going on. Yes, it sucks. And yes, I wish that they had their full complement of pieces together. But guess what? They still have Dak. They still have Zeke. They still have Tony Pollard. They still have a good offensive line. And their defense is stingy enough to where they should be like competing in games. The fact that they gave up 36 points to the Raiders and they let Deshaun Jackson go for over 100 yards, I wanted to puke. Right? I was having a great Thanksgiving. I made an air-fried turkey. It was a great day. It was there with my family. My girlfriend was there. It was a great time. And then I have to sit there and watch the Cowboys game and be completely disgusted because they look like crap, right? And they're asking Dak Prescott to drop back 47 times. He threw for 375 yards, big whoop. Like, I don't care about him throwing for 400 yards and throwing 50 times a game. I would prefer Dak to throw the ball 25 times for 200 yards and let Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard both get like 100 yards because they're capable of doing that. And like I said, what does that do? That keeps your defense that's not playing that well right now off the field. Like I said, complementary football, which they are not doing. So we can talk about all the excuses. You can bring it up if you want to. I'm simply going to say they need to get their shit together. Like it's very on the ball, control the football, use play action, and they'll win games. There's a stat that's out there, and I don't have it up with me right now, but when Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard combines, when they get 25 plus carries, Dallas has like an 80% winning percentage.
I mean,
I don't know about you, but
it's so simple.
I don't know about you, but to me, 80%, I'll take that. But like the last couple games, they just wanted to get pass happy, and everyone's been patting Kellen Moore on the back. He's the next hot offensive coordinator that's going to get. He's going to leave Dallas and he's going to get a head coaching job, just like Sean McVay and Cliff Kingsbury and all these offensive gurus. But yet he wants to go away from what's working. It's like it was working for the first 7 weeks of the season, and then all of a sudden you want to go away from it. I don't know what else to say. It's annoying. I don't know if you can tell my voice, but it's been upsetting to see because they have the talent. It's not like they suck. This Dallas team didn't have talent. Do whatever you got to do to try to win. This team has too much talent to be 7-4. They're lucky they play in the NFC East, where the rest of those teams suck, and it's going to be easy for them to win the division. Because if they're in the NFC West, your Cardinals division, they'd probably be sitting at 3 or 4 right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Jerry, when I was praising the Cowboys, I forgot about something.
I think you jinxed them is what you did. So I'm going to ask that you please don't do that anymore.
That's fine. I forgot about something. Jared, I think you forgot about something too. What we've been talking about all this podcast, really. Brian Kelly, legendary head coach. Lincoln Riley, legendary head coach. We mentioned Nick Saban's name today. I think we forgot that Mike McCarthy is the Cowboys coach, Jared. And I know I see that sigh on your face, and I think you just remembered, because I think you're trying to find a reason why Dak isn't playing well, or why Zeke isn't playing well, or why the defense isn't playing well. First of all, let me say, the last 2 games, defense can't do much, right? They held the Chiefs to 19 points. Pretty impressive with how bad the Cowboys were playing that game, okay? And like you said, Cowboys don't run the ball. Can't blame Dan Quinn for giving up points because your defense just gets tired. And you guys are banged up defensively. So I look at the offense in Kellen Moore. I blame him a little bit. But who's an offensive head coach? Mike McCarthy. He ain't a defensive head coach. He's an offensive head coach. So Mike McCarthy's probably coming up with a lot of the game plans for these games in conjunction. Go ahead.
I want to correct you, right? I don't want to interrupt. Here's the thing, and you know what? It sucks that Mike McCarthy has COVID. I wish he didn't, because I don't wish that on anybody. But I'm not mad about him not being on the sidelines this Thursday.
Yeah.
I'm really not.
I was waiting to ask
he
you
gets
about
to watch this game from his couch and really learn and kind of see what we are all seeing as fans. Because sometimes I don't know what goes through that guy's head. But I will correct you, because I want to let you continue. Mike McCarthy doesn't really do jack, right? That's Kellen Moore's offense.
That's the problem
that he had from the previous years when he was the offensive coordinator. Dan Quinn runs that defense. Mike McCarthy maybe, implements some things here and there, but Kellen Moore is in control of that offense. So Mike McCarthy, he kind of he's a guy that stands there with a clipboard and a helmet. Or I'm sorry, I don't really know what else he does besides call timeouts.
Right?
He's calling plays.
And Jared, that's the problem. What does the guy do? Why is he there? I don't get it. So, when you look at Cliff Kingsbury, right? I'm bringing him up because I watch him every week. Cliff Kingsbury clearly is the offense guy, right? But I can remember being at games live. Dude, Cliff is over patting the defense on the back, talking to them occasionally. He's still the head coach. He leaves the defense to, a head coach in Vance Joseph, because that's what Vance Joseph is. He's a future NFL coach again. So you're going to leave that coach alone. But I still see Cliff going over there, even when they're on offense, talking to Chandler Jones, talking to Budda Baker, talking to Patrick Peterson when he was still on the team. So what is Mark McCarthy doing? Why aren't Kellen Moore, like you said, and Dan Quinn just running the team? Why does Mike McCarthy need to be there? Why isn't Dan Quinn head coach or Kellen Moore head coach? I don't so I think the Cowboys have a head coach problem, because when you see something going wrong with your team and you're the head coach, you usually fix it. Mike McCarthy is just letting everything happen. And I think Mike McCarthy is to blame just as equally as some of these other guys on the Cowboys. There is injury problems with Dallas for sure. You're missing DeMarcus Lawrence. Zeke's a little banged up. Dak was banged up.
Lawrence is coming back this Thursday.
Yeah, he's coming back. You were out Tyron Smith. You're out CeeDee Lamb, Mari Cooper, obviously. But still, I think Mike McCarthy is the biggest problem the Cowboys have right now, and it's gonna hold them back in the play. Mike McCarthy needs to step up for the Cowboys to be a contender. That's my opinion. It's got to be the head coach. The head coach's got to become the head coach again. I think he's just, like you said, he's a placeholder. He's just a guy that's there. He's the name. It's I remember the movie Casino, Jared, where the mob.
Yeah, Robert De Niro.
Yeah, the mob really ran the casino, but they put that one guy in there to just be the normal white dude that would just answer everything perfectly and take the rap for everything, because you couldn't say the mob.
He's the fall guy.
Yeah,
he's the fall guy.
Mike McCarthy's the fall guy, but the Cowboys are falling. That's the problem. So, yeah, you need to figure it out. Mike McCarthy needs to step up, because he can't do it. A head coach like him doesn't win Super Bowls. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, he'll be stepping up from the couch, probably eating Whataburger this Thursday. So
wow, love it. All right, let's move on. The two best teams in the NFL right now, Jared, agree or disagree? The Green Bay Packers and the New England Patriots.
I can't disagree.
So when you look at these two teams, right, the Packers with the big win against the Cardinals, they've beaten the Vikings on the road. They beat the Rams. They've beaten plenty of other teams, But Aaron Rodgers is injured. He's playing with a COVID toe, whatever you want to call it. It's a little worse than turf toe. He's in pain, right? Teams has great defense. Then you go to New England. Obviously, Bill Belichick, great defense, right? Great scheme on offense with Josh McDaniel, good head coaching. But rookie quarterback, right? Rookie quarterback that still does make some dumb mistakes, keeps teams in it. Right now, who is the best team in the NFL? The Patriots, the Green Bay Packers, or my Arizona Cardinals. You can throw them in there too if you want. But
I'm surprised you didn't add your Cardinals in there. It really is
because we lost to Green Bay with all the wide receivers, and we had all our guys. I mean, I'm not going to sit here. Kyler got hurt on the last play of the game. Kyler's injury did not affect that game. And yes, we have gone 2-1 with a backup quarterback, but like if Kyler doesn't get healthy, which he isn't yet still, which is concerning, we're not the best team in the league. You can't not have your quarterback, and you know what I'm saying, right? You can't not have Dak and then say yourself your team's right.
I just wanted to hear you say that. I wanted to make sure that you were still down here on Earth and you weren't floating out in space somewhere. So no, you're here. You're here.
So who's your best team? I mean, you can say my Cardinals if you want. I'm going to disagree with you because we have lost to the other team. But who do you think the better team is right now? Who has a better chance?
If I had to put my money on it, I would say the Packers because of Aaron Rodgers, injured toe or not. Here's the thing with the Patriots, right? And this is what scares me is I thought this Patriots team was going to be able to put it together like they are right now next year. I think they're ahead of schedule in how well they're playing. And I really think that's because of Mac Jones, right? We've talked about before how much money they spent in the offseason, like $150 million in guaranteed money to all of the players that they brought in, which we said, yeah, those were nice signings, but are those like game-changing players? Not really. Mac Jones, rookie quarterback, how quickly is he going to pick up the offense? We know that he came from Alabama that runs a pro offensive, all that stuff. This Patriots team is ahead of schedule, and I think there's two reasons. I think that's because of Belichick, and I think that's because of Mac Jones. Now, yes, I think they're a scary team, and I don't think many people want to play them, but I would prefer to play them over Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs is scary. Right? I mean, yes, I know he's only won one Super Bowl, and it was back in 2010 or 2011, but still, the way that he is playing right now, and the Packers are injured as well. Right? They're about to get some guys back on their offensive line and defensive line. So if this team, and they're missing Jair Alexander, who's one of the best corners in the entire league. Exactly. So if they can get those guys back, this Packers team really has a chance to do it. And I think this is one of those like win or Aaron Rodgers is gone for sure type of years. So we all know that Aaron Rodgers is motivated, but I think this team and Matt LaFleur are just as motivated, knowing that this could be the last ride for Aaron Rodgers. And then they're going to have to go to Jordan Love or somewhat retool with another drafted quarterback, right? So to me, I'm going with the Packers right now, and also because they just beat a good Rams team that's reeling a little bit, but they've been a little more impressive in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, well, so I'll answer this question too. I agree with you. I think the Packers are better than the Patriots, and this will go into what we're going to talk about at the end of the podcast. I think the Bills beat the Patriots this weekend and kind of regain control of the AFC East. So I think it's just because New England hasn't played the best team in their own division yet. It's like when the Cardinals played the Rams and beat the crap out of them, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, maybe they are the best team in the NFC West. And then it took a couple games, and the Cardinals kept winning and all that stuff. And then now when they go play each other on Monday in 2 weeks, I'm sure the Cardinals will be favored as long as they have Kyler. So I think it's a little bit of that with New England. I think Green Bay is the best team. I will say this, though, Jared. I'm going to be a little bit biased, okay? The reason I threw my team in there, because if Kyler is healthy and DeAndre Hopkins is healthy, I think the Cardinals are still the best team. Remember, that game we played against the Packers, I mean, if AJ Green just turns around, we win. Like, it's not like Green Bay dominance. I know they were missing a bunch of guys, but we're one play away from being – 9-1, potentially 10-0, whatever the record would be right now. So I still do think my Cardinals are a better team, and especially when you get tape on Aaron Rodgers and all those guys, you figure it out, right? But I think Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are the best team in the NFL right now. But when Kyler and the Cardinals get healthy, I don't see anybody beating them. In my opinion, I don't see anybody beating them. I thought it might be the Cowboys. Tampa Bay is clearly not the same. The Packers are good, but you've already played them and you only lost by a few points. I think my Cardinals are that team that's trending up, right? A little bit, kind of like the mission.
Unfortunately, I can't really argue with you on that. You're right. When Arizona gets healthy, which it looks like they will in the next couple weeks, they're a bad team. And when I say that, that's a good thing. Like they're scary. You do not want to play them. I will say something about the Bills because it seems like you're a little high on the Bills right now. To me, it's like 1 week they look great and 1 week they don't. They're 7-4. They have the same record as the Cowboys, right? And they haven't really had as many injuries or COVID scares like some of these other teams have. Now, they did just lose Tre'Davious White, their number one Pro Bowl corner. I think he just tore his ACL last week. So that's going to be a big loss for them. But they've lost to the Titans. They had that bad loss to the Jaguars, and they also lost to the Colts 41-15 just 2 weeks ago. So, they rebounded and had a good game against the Saints on Thanksgiving night. But I'm not so sure that they're just going to be able to beat the Patriots, because the Patriots right now, I think, are playing better football more consistently. The game is, where's the game at? I think it's in Buffalo. So,
Yeah.
they're going to have the home field advantage and all that stuff. And it's Monday night, primetime game, all that. But they got some big games coming up. They still got to play the Patriots twice. They get the Buccaneers in 2 weeks. And then they kind of finish off the season with cupcakes and the Falcons and the Jets. But, I mean, if I had to put money on it, I'm betting the Patriots right now. I think the Patriots are just playing better complementary football all the way around. I think I've said.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, yeah. I see it as like New England's won a bunch of games in a row, right? And the Bills have not been playing the best, but they finally get a really impressive win last week on Thanksgiving. I mean, how many days is this like to prepare for this game?
10.
No, it's 11 because it's Monday night. Like they have
Oh, you're right. My bad.
Yeah. No. Nobody really thinks about it. It's kind of stupid the NFL did this to them. Like, why are you giving them Monday Night Football when they have Thursday Night Football? It's ridiculous. I think it's enough time for the Bills to win. And I again, Tre'Davious White, the loss of him is brutal. But I still think this Bills team's offense is very, very good. And the defense is good enough. But like I said, we're talking about the best team in the NFL right now. I think the Bills and Patriots are really close. Patriots are probably better, but the Packers are that clear team until Arizona gets healthy, just in my opinion. Yeah, so do you see the Patriots winning this game on Monday? It's the biggest game of the week.
Yes, I'm saying it. I'm riding with the Patriots. I'm riding with Bill Belichick. I'm riding with Mac Jones. I think that defense is playing nasty right now. I mean, here's the thing about the Bills too, right? When we get into December football, it's cold weather. It could even be snowing. Like, you want to have some type of running game to be able to complement your pass. Like, I get Josh Allen is great. He's got Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders. Got a whole host of weapons, right? But, like, where's the running game? Because I think you're going to need that when it's snowing and you can't just chuck the ball over the field 50 times a game. So whether it's Devin Singletary, whether it's Zach Moss, I think Matt Breida is also on that team. Like, find some type of running game, and then I think I'll have a little more faith in this Bills team. Yeah. But if you're just going to rely on Josh Allen to chuck it 50 times a game in cold weather, I can't get on board with that, man. Like, I'll put one foot in. I'll put, like, a big toe in, but I ain't jumping in with both feet.
Sure. No, it's especially with all their injuries and stuff like that, it's questionable. But I think the Bills at home will step up, and they'll show that they still are one of the best teams in the NFC. So the rest of the NFL slate looks like this. Thursday night, Jared, your Cowboys are playing. You get a week of rest, unlike the Bills and all the other teams that played on. Well, I guess the Saints too. So it's pretty even. No Mike McCarthy. Maybe Taysom Hill returns as quarterback of the Saints. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I think, by the way, Jared, that's a must-win for your Dallas Cowboys. You need to win that game. They have no quarterback.
You ain't got to tell me.
And then we move on to Sunday. My Cardinals are playing the Bears in Chicago. Be interesting to see if they bring back Kyler and Hopkins, because that weather probably is going to be brutal, and maybe you don't want to bring guys back that are hurt. The game.
No.
Listen, hold on. No, I'm just saying. It'll be the next game is Monday against the Rams. The Arizona Cardinals do have a 2-game lead on the or what is it? Yeah, 2-game lead on the NFC West as well. 1-game lead on the in the NFL period in the NFC. So they can't afford to still play Colt McCoy one more game with the extra day of rest and Monday Night Football at home. You're not playing in 30-degree weather. I'm throwing it out there. You might see Kyler and Hopkins still not play this Sunday.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it from a different perspective here, right? We're in December now, last month of the season. This is prime time. You're playing for the number 1 seed. I get it. You're 9-2. Colt McCoy's done a great job. If your players are healthy enough, they play. I don't want to hear about cold weather conditions, any of that stuff. What would alarm me is if Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins don't play in this game, because that tells me that they're still not close. Like, their injuries are still significant enough to where they're not 100%. And that would alarm me going down.
Yeah, no. Jared, I think what I was trying to say is, like, the weather in Chicago.
Because if they're ready to play, you put them out there. I don't care what the weather is.
True. I'm just saying, I think with the weather, maybe hold off on the super concerned about Kyler and Hopkins, because there still is that like reasonable extra day at home against the team you really need to beat. Because if you win the NFC West, at least you're like that second seed, right? At least you play some god awful team, that's going to end up going like 8-8, making the playoffs, right? Like the like Washington or Minnesota that you can beat, right? You want that. Obviously that top spot, but if you're not able to get it, you at least want to win your division and your conference and be that number 2 seed. So, but obviously number 1 seed is best for Cardinals. Other big games, Chargers at Bengals. Bengals have a chance to be 8-4, and after the Chargers display last week, you never know. Looking at still Ravens Steelers. That's a huge game after the Ravens. They beat, and that division's still a little bit up for grabs. And then Broncos Chiefs, another big game, and of course Patriots Bills. So not the greatest slate of NFL games, but at least it ends with Monday Night Football and a fantastic matchup between the Bills and Patriots.
And then Broncos Chiefs get flexed to Sunday night, or was that always a Sunday night game?
It did, because I think the original game was Niners Seahawks, and obviously the Seahawks suck. Like nobody wants to watch them after last night's Monday Night Football game. Nobody wants to watch Seattle anymore. And in San Francisco at the time they flexed it, I think it was like 5-5, so they're like, who cares? But yeah, they got flexed, and that is in Kansas City. So Kansas City should be able to win that game. I don't know about by 10. It's kind of ridiculous, but yeah. So big slate of games, and then of course you have the conference championships in college football. You have the SEC championship, Georgia, Alabama. What will happen? How will it affect the rankings? Going to be insane. Michigan, Iowa. You never know. Maybe Iowa just pounds the ball, and Michigan's tired after last week, and maybe Iowa pulls it out. Oklahoma State, Baylor. Jared, I think there's a chance both those teams still make the college football playoff. That game is worthy of watching. So a lot of big-time games, and of course Cincinnati, Houston, really for Cincinnati. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to watch. I cannot wait, but for this podcast, we are done. We'll be back next week talking about all this stuff that happened, the college football playoff, the NFL, Patriots, Bills, what my Cardinals did, what Jared's Cowboys did. Big show next week already. But for this podcast, we are done. I am Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And we'll see you guys next week.